Welcome to the Talented Learning Show podcast series, episode 79 with independent learning tech analyst John Lay. Today I interview Gregory Rose, Chief Experience Officer at Intellum, about my favorite topic, ROI in education. You can find more of our fiercely independent content at talentedlearning.com. Well, welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Talented Learning Show. On this show, I am fortunate to interview experts from both the practitioner and the vendor side of customer education, partner education, extended enterprise learning in general. And today's no different. I have a great guest, a Chief Experience Officer of Intellum. Intellum's a major player in the customer education and partner education market. Greg and I put our heads together all the time, and we think about ROI. We think about the customer life cycle. We think about making an impact, a business impact with learning, and how to prove that and how to measure that. And we both come at it from two different perspectives in the industry, but we're trying to get to the same place, which is to help all you listeners to get yourself out of a cost center and into a profit center, and use education strategically to external learners to not worry about things like completions, but worry about things like reducing support calls or increasing satisfaction rate, or more importantly, increasing the flow of educated, qualified leads. These are just some of the things the best organizations are doing and measuring with customer education. Greg is helping his customers always to help measure that and to help get over that barrier of just LMS data to actually showing the business impact and helping his customers become more important in their organization. And we're going to learn all about it. Well, Greg, welcome to the Talented Learning Show. It's sure great to have you
Thank
here.
you. Yeah, it's great to be here, John. Love it.
All right. We've been talking customer education for years and years, but I never had the opportunity to have you on the show till
I'm
now here
excited.
on. Yeah, me too. Me too, for sure. So a lot of our audience doesn't know about your
Sure.
organization, or maybe know your organization well. So why don't we start there? Tell us about Intellum and what's your focus in the market?
Yeah. So Intellum is the customer, partner, employee learning platform that large brands, really cool companies like Google and Meta and Amazon, Atlassian and Xero and TikTok, and companies like Gusto and MailChimp, and a really cool company called Impact.com. This is the platform they all rely on to drive business outcomes through education. We've been in the space for 25 years. We are a long time, we have a long track record of innovation. So we built the world's first cloud-based LMS. We delivered the first native mobile social learning app. And now we've just launched a true AI personalized learning assistant in the platform. So this is today live. Our clients can give their learners this experience where the learner can tell the onboard AI assistant about themselves, and it'll determine your goals. It'll match to key skills, and it'll give you a custom profile, and all of that is used for like this really hyper personalized learning plan development and tracking. It's pretty amazing. I joking around, we were looking at some stuff, and my reaction was that gif of Shia LaBeouf going, magic, it's really cool. But anyways, all this neat stuff is why we get to work with the companies we work with, and it's a pretty amazing company. I'm honored to be part of it.
Wow, cool. You've been there a long time. You have
10 years.
Unique,
Yeah.
10 years. You have a unique title, Chief Experience Officer. What's that mean? What are you working on?
Yeah. So, the place where I'll start, the way I'll start this and try to keep it short, because I can talk about myself and our company forever. But I think SaaS companies are really great at selling outcomes. We've gotten really, really good at that. We can dig into the buyers like personal motivations and connect them to these things. This idea of like what the future is going to look like when you're using the platform or the solution that we sell. And then I think we're really terrible at teaching in general. Just generally speaking, we're all really bad at teaching customers how to actually achieve those outcomes. Now, there's a whole conversation there around like the difference between the buyer and the people that actually have to do the work, and the disconnect that happens when the buyer buys something and then hands it off, and people are doing the work, and then it's like they get back to the end of the year, and the buyer's like, this isn't what I bought. And the admin are like, yeah, the platform sucks. So there's a whole story there. What we're doing is thinking about all of that a little bit differently, and how we get to a place where customers are demonstrating that they're doing something bigger than just traditional learning. So what we're doing is pulling together things that have traditionally been separated. We're tearing down those post-sale lines, the hard roles and responsibilities between things like implementation and then onboarding and then support and then education in the customer journey. Those things have all traditionally lived, in their respective and kind of siloed teams. We're pulling all of that together into one function area that we call customer experience. So implementation, onboarding, this continuous cycle of like support and education, and now even like some deeper platform and program consulting. All of that is in service of making sure that each of our customers is able to achieve is able to impact the business outcomes that the organization is focused on. So not just the learning outcomes, like we want to go a step deeper. We want to help our clients make sure that they're able to demonstrate that the programs that they run have some significant impact on the business, which is why we're here today. We can talk all about what that means.
Yeah, interesting. As a recovering LMS sales guy,
Yeah.
I think what I heard there is that we're real good at selling these solutions. And so that's probably why you're working on something called the Advisory Services Initiative. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So, like I said before, our company, we've got like 25 years of experience doing this stuff, like working with organizations to ensure that the education program is having a real business impact. That's hard, and it can be really hard, especially if you're trying to do this for the first time. So, we've gone deeper on consulting. And I can demonstrate as we talk today some places where this is like inherently even built into the platform. Like you can see as a customer some of the high level best practice program metrics to sort of see how your specific initiatives like onboarding or certification is performing. That some of that's baked into the platform, but I think I still think there's a need across every organization really to sit down with folks that have our unique purview. So we look across hundreds of customers. I can see large, huge enterprise initiatives, millions of learners that are churning through content every day. I can see small, really nimble initiatives where the audience may be smaller, but these guys are like in a hyper continuous improvement cycle. I mean, they're measuring on a weekly basis and making changes on a weekly basis. And from all of that, from both sides of that story, we can draw perspective and best practices that we can then apply back to our customers. It's important that they know how to use the platform. That's table stakes. We want to help make sure that they've gone to the next step, which is especially right now, especially in the environment that we're in right now. We want to help them make sure that education has the visibility and the recognition for driving the kind of business impact, business outcome, things like revenue, cost reduction that it can do if it's set up correctly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, especially in customer education and partner education, everything that you do is tied to moving that business needle for sure. But you're right. Everybody struggles to get that data or to perform that analysis. But it's nice that you're using the best practices of everybody. Let's dig in more to the business planning part. Like, so operationally, or I guess practically, what does something like this look like? How does this work? Business planning in general, and setting up these metrics and helping them measure. Like, what kind of services are involved in that?
Yeah. So I can give you a couple of examples of things that we've worked through recently, and I think this kind of like will start to just clarify what it is that I'm on about. So we've got. I was thinking about this morning. We've got two very different client scenarios, but they both two different kind of scenarios in terms of what the programs are, the size of the program, size of the companies. But I think the challenges were the same. One of these was they were setting up a new customer education program from scratch. The other was a large, established, long-running program. In both cases, the teams were focused on the learning outcomes and the metrics related to the consumption of the content inside the platform, right? So they're looking at, they kind of came into this conversation like they want to do something more, but they came into it like, yes, we are tracking outcomes. We're like, all right, let's talk about what those are. And they're like, we're improving the number of new learners that we're acquiring. We're improving the number of enrollments. We're improving the number of completions. We're improving assessment scores. And because increasing these numbers is good for business, right? Like it's good. That's sort of where they stopped. That's where they came to the table. Mm-hmm. These kind of outcomes are important and they're great leading indicators, but every external education initiative, customers, partners, can and should be tied to some kind of business outcome directly, like growth. So think revenue, like retention, like performance, like cost reduction. And I think right now, again, in this environment that we're in, these business outcomes, take education out of it for a minute. Our companies, these things that we're focused on are important. The goals are shifting constantly. And we all are sort of experiencing an increase in those shifting priorities. And so, we had to figure out how to help both of these companies, very similar positions, get to a place pretty quickly where they were able to demonstrate that impact to the company. And so I can talk a little bit more about how we did that.
Okay. What are the biggest challenges? I mean, it seems obvious, you can move the business needle. You're not doing this for fun. What's the challenge?
Yeah.
What's the challenges that people run or that organizations run into? Why are they having such a hard time getting from basically training progress metrics to business metrics? What's the barriers there?
Yeah, I think the short answer, if I answer that in one word, it's data. That's really the challenge. Now, we've been saying this for decades about business in some way, shape, or form, but like the challenge, I think, traditionally is that the education team, regardless of where it lives, and we can we can drill down into that for a minute if you want to too. But regardless of where education lives, it has a tendency to be a little bit siloed. And so, it's got tech, it's got a stack, maybe primarily it's got an LMS, and it is, they are deploying and managing content through the LMS, and they are tracking results, engagement and results that are tied to the things that live in the LMS. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's traditionally how we get into this cycle where it's like, cool, we're looking at user acquisition, and then we're looking at performance related to the consumption of content. We're measuring the effectiveness of the content with some kind of assessment, or a survey or something. And that's all they can see. And so I think the challenge, there might be there might be something in all this that I think still folks struggle with or have a hard time really visualizing. When education practitioners talk about education driving business outcomes, that none of that business outcome information, the data can live inside the education platform. All you can do with an education platform is the things I just described. You can deploy content, you can measure the effectiveness of the content through something like assessment scores, you can track who's doing what, but that is what is possible in the LMS in its entirety. I think the challenge is, how do you jump the fence and start to correlate that consumption of data with business data? That's where people stop, and either they don't have a plan, or frankly, they don't have the buy-in, the relationships, the authority to start to do things like look at an individual user, a unique ID, and track what happens to what that person's behavior change is like outside of the activity that they're engaged in inside the LMS.
Yeah, without a doubt, Greg. This is all the things that we talk about at Talented Learning all the time, of trying to get this measurement, but to bring it home for people. Well, one point before that. So at Talented Learning, we have a case study directory. So I collect and catalog and tag case studies around the industry. We have about 120 up there. I'd say 80% of them, 85% of them, the case study is about training progress statistics, and 15 to 20% of them are about moving the business needle. And so it's, that's probably a real assessment, I think, on life too, of
totally.
real life. That 15-20% are there, and the other 80% want to get there for sure.
It's hard, man. And I think this is no slight or condemnation of our education leaders. It's not that people don't want to get there. I've yet encountered the actual education leader who thinks they shouldn't be there. I think we all know we should be there. I think the challenge is, can I get there? And there are some strategies that we've seen we can talk about today around ideas on how you can do that. There's some stuff I've seen that's worked really well.
Is it technical or is it business? I mean, is it just a matter of getting the data? Is it a matter of trying to cross over some imaginary political line? How do you navigate that? Give us some good advice.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's both. I mean, and I think it depends on your org. So certainly there's data stuff. Like at the highest level, you should be piping out all of your education, all of the data from the LMS into something else. So that depends on what your organization is. It could be a data repository tool like BigQuery. It could be data visualization tools like Tableau. I mean, whatever your data science internal process is where that should be going. And so one challenge is that team in general. It's like, depending on the organization, the size of the organization, that getting their attention and sort of like getting to a place where you've secured the ability to sort of pipe the data out and then dig in to the correlations can be hard. I think the second, and they're sort of related, but I think the second is political. So my favorite example, and I see this more than any other one, is our friends in RevOps. It's like they're going to protect revenue data, and it's specific to them, and they're not going to share it. And it's like, the company doesn't think that the education team needs to see the actual spend dollar for an individual learner or an individual customer. It's like RevOps is like, why do you want that? You don't get that. You can't have that data. And so we've, I think over time, we've figured out some strategies, both Intellum and then other practitioners I've talked to have sort of come up with similar strategies for how you break down either the data science team bubble or something like the RevOps siloed, somewhat political challenge.
I guess that brings us to a nice transition point here as we dig deeper into what these business benefits are.
Mhm.
Personally, I think it's helpful to think through the lens of the customer life cycle
Yeah.
of where you can apply value
Yeah.
from pre-sales to onboarding to ongoing support and
Yeah.
growth and advocacy.
Yeah.
For some of those, can you get more specific when you talk about revenue? Revenue's revenue, but what are
Yeah.
thinking through that lens? What are some more specific
Oh yeah, man.
return on investment metrics that your clients are striving to achieve and impacting?
Yeah.
Like, give
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
for instances.
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is that this is all about where and how education fits into the customer journey. I mean, this is even true for us. We're rethinking this and reworking it. I mean, certainly education should be present in post-sale stuff like onboarding, support, certifications. All of that is like growth focused maturity modeling that's driving ARR. That is how our customers are talking about it when it is focused there. This generally lives in these programs generally live in customer success, they live in support, they live in product. We also have a number of clients who are now pulling education forward in the customer journey. So they're not only influencing the prospects that are in an active sales cycle, they are driving lead creation and closed won numbers. So they are legit tracking educated, qualified leads. And by the way, this places the education program owner now at the revenue acquisition table. And I think uh, uh, right now, uh, not being a cost center or not being perceived as a cost center and being part of the conversation about revenue acquisition is a really uh, is a really strategic and comfortable place to be. So when we look, we just did our latest round of research with Forrester. They survey a whole bunch of companies. They look at some Intellum clients. They look at everybody else's clients. They sort of talk through the program leaders. I mean, the impact right now, the documented impact of this kind of stuff is insane. They're talking about on average when it's orchestrated the way we're now talking about it being orchestrated today. You're talking about a 35% increase on average in the average lifetime value of an educated customer. They're demonstrating 30% increases in closed won when they educate them during the sales cycle. They're showing a like 23 to 25% increase in customer retention when the customer is educated.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
fantastic.
my main message around all of that is like if you could if these kind of results are documented across broad surveys and education is not a major growth strategy for your company today, I think you should go push,
Yeah.
grab that data off the Intellum website, the full reports there, use that internally to start pushing on education as a growth strategy.
Mm-hmm. And breaking down that barriers, because the thing
Yeah, man.
is if you're not doing it, it doesn't matter, because guess what? Your competition is.
Your competition is that. I mean,
Your
and as
competition, they're getting
evidenced,
those benefits.
yeah, as evidenced by the data, right? And so if you like people, we have limited amounts of time, uh, all of us on any given day, and we're consuming content on a daily, more content on a daily basis, and it's growing like crazy. There's only there's a set amount of time you're going to dedicate as a customer to learning something, because I also want to go watch Shogun, and it's like if there is a company who is making sure that I am successful with the product that they sold me, if making sure that I'm achieving the outcomes that I want to achieve, that are making sure they're helping me get to a place where I can demonstrate internally the impact of my program on the business. Look, that is the company that I'm aligned with. It's the one that I want to work with. I'm going to dedicate a big chunk of my time to making sure I'm consuming that content.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think the kind of wrapping up a point on that is, as you look to move from training progress, then you get into the actual business impact. And
Yeah.
and just right now you're saying the percentage here, the percentage there. Now the next step, this is the holy grail. The next step is to translate that into what that actual dollar
Oh
amount
man,
that dollar amount is.
no
Because if you
doubt.
know that a customer churn costs you $23,000 or whatever it is, you should be able to
That's right.
say, here's the actual impact in dollars, and when you can get to that level, it's laughable about what a customer education department costs, the LMS, the content, it's laughable because it's a rounding error. All you got to do is get to that dollars to show your impact. And
There's no
then,
doubt, man. We're in a world right now where education teams are getting decimated. It's like people are getting cut, programs are going away, they're shrinking. I mean, I think in a lot of instances, what I see is that the teams that are severely impacted are the ones that are not sitting in front of leadership regularly talking
sure.
about the business impact. I think the challenge is when you wait until you're asked to demonstrate the impact, it is really hard to swim around,
Yeah,
in a
it's too
pool
late.
of data and try to get it to tell a story. Right. So the companies that are growing, the programs that are growing are the ones, to your point, that have a super simple, really clear, high level roll up for leadership. It's like, hey, leadership, our education program decreased support costs by 10% this year. Like, that's kind of all you need to say. It's one bullet point in one slide of a bigger, presentation to leadership. Now, if they want to drill down and they're like, well, how did you do that? You're like, well, we did this by streamlining and improving the content that, for example, we present around new product ABC adoption. We've got this new product. We really got hyper focused on how we were going to educate people about the product, onboard them, get them to a place where they felt comfortable using it. Now, and they're like, okay, cool. What does that mean? And then you drill down again. You're like, well, we know that when a new customer who's completed new product onboarding, when they've completed the content, they submit X% less tickets than the customer who does not complete the content. And they're kind of nodding their heads. You're like, okay, so we engaged more customers in the initiative. We engineered better content. We reduced ticket volume. And you look at your friend in support and say, what's the average ticket cost? What's the cost of an average support ticket? And they're like, it's, $397. And you're like, cool. So here's some math. This number of people that are educated, this percentage reduction in tickets, this much per ticket, 10% reduction in cost. And like, that's the story I want to tell right now.
Sure. That's the fun story. That's the fun story. All right. Well, this conversation goes quick like all of our conversations,
Oh man,
and we're
no
at
doubt.
time. So, how about your best advice for folks that are right at this cusp right now, where they're good at measuring internally and they're looking to make that? What's your best advice in 2 minutes or less?
Yeah, man, I got two things. So number one, start small. Listen, we all have huge, a lot of us have huge programs. There's a lot of content in them. That stuff's to continue to roll. You're not blowing anything up here. What is the goal for the company that education can actually impact? Let's say it's cost reduction. Then which initiatives do you have in play today that actually have a chance of impacting that cost reduction goal? Okay, so do we need to improve that content? Is the content good? Do we think it's right? What is the actual metric that we're going to use to measure cost reduction? Maybe it's that ticket number, we're going to decrease ticket costs. Okay, so we are going to set a goal for the rest of the year around ticket reduction through education. We're going to find our friends and support that are going to connect with us. We're going to give them the completion data. These customers, these individual users have completed that content. That support people are going to tell us, like, have those individual users, even if they can't or won't give us the user by user data, just on average, did this group of users on average submit less tickets after their completion date? That's where the big, hey man, we reduced costs by 10%. That's it. Start small, 1 or 2 initiatives for the year, and you can show massive impact. The rest of the education program continues. But leadership doesn't care about enrollments and completions and assessment scores. And when you're talking about it, they hear cost that can be reduced, cost that can be reduced, cost that can be reduced, cut. What they do care about is we made a 10% reduction in company cost. Start small, find the metric, prove that you're making the progress.
Sage advice. Greg Rose, Chief Experience Officer. Tell him, Greg, thanks for showing up here on Talented Learning.
Thanks, John.
For our first time, it's great. I love talking ROI. I love talking metrics.
Me too.
And in this environment, it's really important for, well, yourself and really all learning system vendors to go from being a software provider to a solution provider, because there's a lot of good software programs out there right now. And so it's not about it's really about getting that to the next level. And, you know, we've both been in education for 30 years, talking about this seat at the executive table. This is the seat at the executive table. Is when you can prove your value, they pull out the chair. And so
that's right, man.
Get your chair
Get the
pulled
seat
out,
at the
folks.
table. Yeah.
Get your chair pulled out, folks. All right.
Right.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Talented Learning Show, everyone. I hope you found value, and we'll see you on the next. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, John.